Hello everyone. This video is to kind of introduce some ideas and set some framework for kind of our direction in the Department of Emergency Services at Utah Valley University. Considering what emergency services are, what they have been historically, and kind of where we're going. And I wanted to begin with talking about a concept that social anthropologists have brought forth, Donna Hart and Robert Sussman in their book Man the Hunted. It's a pretty neat book that I've used in some of my writings, and what their concept is that human beings were prey long before they were ever hunters. The dominant theory in social anthropology was that human beings were hunters and gatherers, and so they were predators as much as they were prey. We've always recognized that we've been prey, but they looked at the anthropological evidence, not only the physical evidence, but kind of even some of the psychosocial evidence for our own anxieties and the way that we protect ourselves, and some of the ways that we just act as people that indicate that we have this these protective devices in us that give us strategies, intellectual strategies and collective strategies to protect our own as a species. So that kind of brings me to the idea of the protector, or the guardian, if you will, in society. Those protectors that we see today as police officers, firefighters, military, and that kind of, those different kinds of vocational roles, if you will. So these roles have been around for a very long time, and what Hart and Sussman really talk about is that even when we were hunters and gatherers, or even before we were gatherers, there was a need to make implements and weapons that not only, implements and tools to build things, but also things that functioned against weapons, because human beings by nature don't have any natural weapons like predators do. If you look at a tiger or a lion, you see that they have claws and they have teeth, and these things are designed for ripping and tearing and that kind of a thing. So human beings don't have those natural weapons. Our teeth are really kind of harmless in comparison to like the teeth of a tiger, particularly a saber-toothed tiger from prehistoric days. So we built them. We built spears and arrows, and we built, now we have weapons that are weapons of mass destruction, biological weapons and so forth. So, and these things definitely evolved through time. But we see that even when we go into ancient writings like Psalm 127, there is a mention of, unless the Lord watches over the city, the watchmen watch in vain. So even thousands of years ago, we have this idea that there are people that stood guard over the community to watch for threats. Now, the threats of the hunter-gatherer age were probably predators first, and then maybe marauding tribes and other groups from the outside that came in. But as we evolved as communities, as we socially evolved up even into those biblical times, you can see that the image of a city with a wall around it and watchtowers, and the watchmen, if you will, those guardians, stood on the wall and watched. And so as we started coming into more contemporary times, back in the 17 and 1800s, we see in some of our firefighting texts the history that Ben Franklin started the first fire brigades, the first fire departments, and they were really built out of the insurance companies, where you insured your home and you had a plaque on your home, and when you had a fire, the fire brigade from your insurance company would come and put it out. And of course, in the free market, there became competition between different insurance companies. The insurance company's fire brigade that could beat your insurance company to your house would put your fire out and then use that as a selling point. Hey, if you'd have had us, or if you'll drop that policy and you'll take a policy with us, then we'll serve you better. And so there was free market competition in that. But the outgrowth of the fire service today comes from that idea that there were public protectors that were needed, and some of that involved the concept of a night watchman that walked the streets was in a tower above the fire department or above the city in some ways that would look for smoke. So when they saw smoke or they saw fire coming from a rooftop or whatever, they would sound the alarm. So there's this concept of guardian, and then those people that would go out and take action to mitigate the problem. So Robert Peel in the 1800s began the first formalized and publicly paid for professional police department in the UK, and we know them as bobbies, or in some places in Ireland they call them peelers. So they came from Sir Robert Peel starting the first professional police department, which turned in the United States that obviously Los Angeles and New York were some of the earliest formed professional departments here. But you still see them as divided out away from fire. That the fire industry, came up through another kind of stream, if you will, of history than the police. But also what started the public police departments in the United States, what came out of the Pinkerton detectives, that actually the detectives that were hired to protect the railroads and to protect industry, they were hired by these the owners of these companies and things to protect their assets and be private security and to investigate crimes, different various types of crimes against industry, really turned into the civil police department idea, that now we had police departments and we had town sheriffs and marshals, and of course the FBI grew out of certain social problems and societal problems we had. We also see that our militias, the local militias, that all hands that would come running with arms turned into a formalized military, and now we have branches of the military, Army, Navy, Air Force, and of course the Marines, and then we have National Guard. So we have all of these different roles, but the essence of the people in those roles still reflects back to the concept of the guardian and what the guardian's responsibility to the community is, and what the scope of protection and authority is for the guardians. And it varies across cultures. It varies across, depending on the level of government or the level of society. So government is private, obviously, or public, obviously, and then you've still got a amount of executive protection or private security that does serve private interests and is paid for privately. So then we get to 9/11. 2001, when the Trade Center attacks occurred in New York, and we've just recently commemorated that. And I bring that to mind because our concept of public safety, national security, emergency services had to be reflected upon, had to be reanalyzed and reinterrogated. And so now we look at issues like interoperability. How is not only our communications, but our ability between these specialized services, these things that historically have been specialized and divisions of labor, now have to begin to converge and work together. And where are those lines drawn? Are there really distinct lines that can be drawn, or is there some overlap? So that we see that there are certain services that are going to bleed over into others, which really kind of gets in the way of some of our traditional senses of turf and responsibility and authority. And we talk about the integral conflicts that we have between the services on different types of events from time to time in the different courses we have here. So what we're interested in now is where are we going to, and how are we going to reconceptualize emergency services. I believe that there will still be a core structure or a kernel that has always existed in what our definition of a guardian or a watchman or watch person is. Those things, there are certain essential qualities that are still going to be there, and it will still attract certain types of personalities. But where does it go from here, and how do we as emergency services educators and in our educational community start to bring up new ideas and new concepts to take out into the world and out into the street so that we can more effectively serve our community, serve our citizens. So that's kind of the question, a general question for this YouTube channel, and where we're going to get started. Of course, we'll talk about other things, but at this point, that's something I want to throw out there and invite you to respond to, either by comments or by video, and let's go from there. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you soon again.